There's a popular approach to living, especially commended by the secularity of the modern world, which is to say, what works. It's a pragmatism that, in particular, attempts to handle relationships vis-a-vis one person and another. And it simply says, well, what is the best way to act and react with other persons? And if we do that, life is a lot better. We have a lot less strife. And this might even work with animals generally, creatures in general. If we present ourselves as harmless, peaceful, friendly, helpful, considerate, compassionate, well, at the very least we get the best out of a situation. There may be circumstances where that's still not enough for a good outcome, but it has a much, much greater, better track record than any other approach. For instance, violence in return for violence, or threat in return for threat, or to use fear as a response to feeling fear oneself, anger, and so forth. Let me launch in heavily. A trust in God has a certain superiority of preoccupation, in that it may, depending what our God is, of course, how we see God, but it may immediately bring both hope and trust into your situation. And that may be very necessary for you to succeed in presenting yourself in a peaceful, calm, non-threatening, helpful, blessed way to the personal creature that you're confronted with. Also, I'm saying that a spiritual person in this sense of one who feels they are in a relationship with God, a typical God of whom we might describe as powerful and loving. The thought of such, and the thought of the presence of such, the thought of the possibility of such, in times of difficult relationship with others, can be a powerful help and support and encouragement to your ability to respond favorably to the situation that's so difficult. So we're confronted with a difficult situation, relationship, but we are peaceful. Now, example is a very serious Buddhist monk or nun who is able to call on a habit of their way of life which responds favourably, peacefully, harmoniously, lovingly to very difficult situations. But a person who has not just the experience of the success of such is greatly encouraged to by a habit of trusting in God. So if I come to the situation of an emergency, any difficulty, not just emergencies, but any difficulty, you see, I have this experience of thinking of all situations in terms of the presence of God, someone who is all-powerful, all-loving, and can rescue me. I've found it, I say the experience, I've found the experience in a long line, a succession of situations of difficulties, minor or major, that have been greatly helped and solved by this encouragement and belief and trust and habit and way of thinking that I have developed. Now, the Buddhist, technically without the notion of God, can have achieved the same thing. They have been guided and advised, probably in the past, to behave in a peaceful, passive, helpful, blessed way, and this has worked. So they, with some assurance, come into a situation and have the hope, the expectation that it can work and may well work. And the person who, by comparison, also believes in God may have rather less experience of it working, but more experience of this relationship in their mind, their predisposition to have the hope that it will work. So a trust and a love of God can make up for a deficiency of experience of certain types of situations. In other words, can make up for a deficiency in the experience and habit to date. In the longer run, it's not that this is going to leave the Buddhist or the secular person without the hope that it works, because they have some experience of it working in probably many minor ways, minor and major perhaps, to date. So experience can make up for such. But, well, what I'm arguing is there's some superiority in a very pragmatic sense in the situation where God exists for you, in your mind, in your assurance, because of a practice of living according to the relationship in the past. In both cases, I'm saying practice is majorly important, but perhaps the trust in God is much wider in its effectiveness in coping with quite different situations, where you constantly refer back to, yes, but trusting in God is the answer here, what are you doing here, Heavenly Dad? I'm going to trust you for this. You have the hope that enables you to be calmer and more rational. To run is not necessarily safe because the creature is much faster than you, or you can't just escape from it. There's no point in putting on a show of violence and so on, because they have more power and more belligerence than you have anyway. It's a completely different approach, isn't it? Passivity, peacefulness, loving, kind approach, so that you are no threat to this creature. They may still have a great interest in harming you. They may be, in the case of a creature, an animal, desperately hungry, and you're the possible meal. Okay? You know this to be the case, or you suspect this is the case. Now, if on the other hand you're trusting in God, you may think, yes, well, I can't see that it's not the case, but I'm going to trust in Him. And that assurance in the back of your mind enables you to continue peacefully presenting a peaceful, non-aggressive front that's far more likely, of course, to achieve a good outcome. It's not certain. This may be your time to go, to die, for instance. You're confronted with a snake or a wild animal beast, and you don't know. But you're in the habit of trusting things to God. In other words, it's the best way to go, rather than to add more and more fear and desperation to the situation. Well, what I'm saying is, the loving relationship with God always seems to present to me as the ultimate best solution. So not that the Buddhist way is to be held in contempt because they don't believe and trust in such a supernatural God. To recognize that it's a great help and a great blessing, and it would be more help and a greater blessing if they had a trust in an all-powerful, loving, in Jesus' terms, of course, a Heavenly Father, actually there, always, leading them through into life eternal. And that may mean at present there's going to be a loss of this temporary life, but then this temporary life's going to be lost at some point anyway, isn't it? And it's life eternal that we truly value and look to. This is our hope, and it's a hope that's not held too unreasonably as we start to build up experience of living according to this hope and seeing how incredibly blessed we are and have been day in, day out to this age that we are at present, whatever that is. You might be a 10-year-old, you might be an 80-year-old. And God has provided all the experience that you've had, every moment of life to date. It's reasonable to draw from this incredible, fortunate circumstance that you've experienced that there's something, someone wonderful helping you every moment of your being. Else why should it be or exist in such astonishing continuity? All this fantastic creation and your body and being itself seems to have no reason for being and existing. Perhaps it is the consequence of some wonderful person, as we might conceive of him or her, whatever you like to say. Not gender specific, okay. And to live according to such a thought, if you have had a little experience of such, may greatly assure you of its validity. And you can only find out by practicing to see if it is so. Trust that you have a loving heavenly Dad, all powerful and all loving, providing and caring for you and possibly all of us. And see how living according to that so changes your experience and view of all things that there's no way you put such a view from you ever again. Because it's such a blessing. You can only prove this by doing it and seeing. And it's not a great risk, is it? For most of the time we are not confronted by terrible, insurmountable difficulties that cause us to panic. We just have the difficulties and minor problems of everyday life. And we are forever finding we have solutions to them that are more or less helping towards a continuity of life until we finally go. By which time we should have had enough years of experience of realizing there's nothing to worry about at all. We can trust it to our heavenly Dad. It's an astonishing hope and belief, but it's a belief with a very good foundation, depending upon the degree to which we have lived accordingly, practicing such trust. So do it now, dear friend, whilst you are well able and you don't have insurmountable difficulties, but live according to the presence of having a Heavenly Father looking after you. Thank Him for all that's good. Whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things. You will want to thank Him and do so. You will want Him to exist and choose to trust He exists. And from the experience of so doing, you will know the way ahead. And it's wonderful. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Love you, Dad. Thank you, Dad. Well, that, I think, is the essence of what the Jesus story is about. And you may find this rather a surprise revelation. It won't be a revelation unless you have the inspiration to practice it. The desire, the wisp of hope, that's the very flame of life itself, trusting in life. We are alive, you see, and the notion of God is the full unfolding of such realization of life, a vision, an idea, a hope of the perfection of life. Life being such that it's of great help and value, as we have found the life that we experience to be. In particular, typically about the love we have had from parents, relatives, friends, even strangers. When we realize how important this has been to us, it's very easy to conceive of something complete and perfect in such regard. The epitome of loving kindness, help, support, and blessing. Charity was the old word. Charitability to all life. And to live according to such hope is so incredibly rewarding that you will never put it behind you. It will be forever your foundation value. Hence, I take it that the preoccupation of the Jesus story is that God exists and is your heavenly Dad, creator of all, yes, sustainer of all, yes, but in particular loves and cares for us as his children. And to visualize and live according to this hope is its own reward. Wonderful into life eternal. That I take it to be the true gospel. And the rest, well, largely misunderstanding. Taste and see. Whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things. See how your life is transformed. How you come to long for the existence of God and choose to believe in such. Very quickly. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.